Well read, what are we talking about today?
Today, Matsy, we're talking about Grant Morrison's Ode to Lovecraftian Horror, Nameless, Issue 3, where the astronauts descend deeper into madness as they approach the asteroid that's slowly hurtling its way through space and its impending impact with Earth, is getting ready to destroy all civilization with a big mystical symbol on the face of it. They find a deep chamber inside of it and they descend further and further, finding themselves in the mouth of madness. At the end of this journey, some of the astronauts go insane and, of course, start slaughtering one another, as one would do when they are crazy, but happen to wake up and find themselves in a completely different reality, in a medical facility, and questioning all they know and hold to be real. What is really happening in Nameless 3?
Well, I'll tell you what Grant Morrison really thinks is happening. He thinks he's wielding shamanic energies in this book, and it's funny because, like, if you, I'm actually reading the trade paperback version, and this is if you read this in single issue form, I don't think you get his end notes, and he has a bunch of end notes in the trade paperback form, and we'll be diving into some of these as we continue this series. But and I've read some of if you've read some of Morrison's other works, he really believes, he genuinely believes he has the power to cast spells through energy, I think, essentially. Taking these occult symbolisms and then wielding them in sort of sigil magic, I think is his big thing. And then, channeling them in symbolic ways to have impacts on the world. And it's he's clearly doing that. He actually says outright which energies he's trying to wield, and it eventually ends up getting into some really just dark territory here. But just what do you guys make of the fact that there's a shaman who is believes he can cast spells through a comic book, through the form, the shape, the symbolisms that he puts in there, whether he's putting Pisces fish or he's invoking the sun and the moon in Kabbalah tradition, or the tunnel of Set, or the dream machine, all these other just things he's mixing in a blender and then channeling outward through the comics medium in a visual way to try to impact the world.
Well, my fingertips did get a little tingly while reading this, but that could have just been the red wine. So I'm not sure. Yeah. What did you think, Matt?
Well, so I mean, on one level, this is a complex thing, and we were playing around with how to even approach this conversation to the Green Group beforehand. But he's, you just spend time on the Wikipedia article on Kabbalah, for instance, and you're gonna see a very different presentation than the sort of things that he alludes to in his notes for the trade paperback. Uh, and then there's all, and I imagine he plays fast and loose with all the other stuff that we understand even less that he's alluding to in this. But and it's kind of it's interesting that he how to say it like you can play like symbolism is important. Just thinking on a literary level, symbolism is important, and you can actually break symbols by just twisting them to do whatever you feel like doing. And you could break symbols by combining them, juxtaposing them with a whole bunch of other symbols that they don't normally are juxtaposed with, right? So just on a literary level, you can garble your story to the point where it just starts to look like you're just kind of impressed with your own collection, so to speak, right? And you start to narratively break down the own purposes for what you're writing to begin with, and then like shammanically, he's he's I mean it does start to feel like he is maybe non-consensually doing things with the reader, or at least that's his plan, is to kind of affect you on some sort of level that goes beyond just a creator reader relationship.
Is that strongly happening though in this issue? Because a huge portion of it is just astronauts kind of falling into an asteroid. Uh,
That's
I
fair.
I don't know where the symbolism part is. He kind of like setting up the occult punch, the 1-2 that's going to totally condemn us all later in the series. Because So far, it's just been kind of a very mysterious sci-fi setup where these people are trapped in space, trying to save humanity and hoping that they can save their own sanity in the process as well.
You're right.
He
You're
he
right. There's neat stuff. I mean, honestly, he's doing stuff that I think all three of us know and love from, like ancient derelict, you know, uh, space technology kind of tropes, like we're going deeper. It's bigger than we thought. It goes deeper than we thought. There's a structure here.
Mhm.
Uh, it looks like giants once walked these halls, kind of things. Like we've seen it in a lot of television and movies and novels over the
so
years,
And
ac-
and
the
to,
that's fun.
but
grimy art style really befits that storytelling too.
Yes.
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
modern day classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl issues 1 through 5 now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
But to actually this is the issue where he's definitely doing a little bit. So there's some seeds here. So in this issue, I believe, there is a point where they see it's right before the astronaut gets possessed. They get to the part of the prison that's inside the asteroid, and they see essentially what looks like just a grate. But he Morrison says that this is from the tarot cards. The pack of the 9 of swords signifies cruelty. Swords are representative of the intellectual facility, so this is clearly the prison for an evil intellect or mind without form. And this is a very important seed for what he's trying to do with the book in future issues. So he's planting that specific
Mm.
seed, and it's like I said, that's so it's there. Most of the issue, I would agree, is just more like of the event horizon playing out.
Mhm.
But then you have stuff like that where he's deliberately saying, "I took this thing from a
Mm.
a cult source. I'm putting it there for a purpose."
Mhm.
So there's at least a stamp here and there of what he's trying to symbolically do at the very least.
Well, as a story architect, what do you think are the really strong uh, points here, the plot points that he's trying to hit on to deepen the mystery and lure you into this world a little bit further? There's, of course, the whole aspect of the asteroid that they're exploring. There's the end of humanity. But then it really took a massive twist at the end where this guy wakes up in an insane asylum. His eyes are fine, but every other patient that is there is blinded. And they're all alluding to the fact that he is now within some alien entity. What exactly is he setting up there?
That was the most difficult piece to unpack. I think it was a great cliffhanger, and I don't think issue 4, which we'll get to in another video, satisfactorily explains. It starts to feel like what we get in the notes of the trade paperback, that he wants to play, and we can applaud him for this. We love this about comics. He's trying to play with our sense of time, our sense of the reliability of the narrator and our own perspective into the story, and abuse us of our assumptions about where time is, and if we're seeing things that are real or not. Comics could do that in a distinctive and unique way that he actually says in the notes, which I mean, it got me really excited, where he says, there's so many comics that are just trying to do uh, like filmic presentations of stories, and and you don't have to tell stories that way. You could actually start to break down reality in a very interesting way that actually film can't do with its rigid sequential, uh, you know, passively consumed storytelling medium. With this kind of active consumption, with the tressage on the page is something Twitless taught me that term of like the how things kind of braid together, and you could actually do some really cool stuff. And I just assume like when things start getting that weird at the end of issue 3, I think I'm still I'd be interested what you guys think, but I think I'm still along for the ride a bit because comics can do that sort of weird stuff. I don't If you did that in a TV show, I'd just roll my eyes. But when it happens in a comic, you start to think, well, this is someone who's really trying to wield the craft, so to speak, and it is trying to respect its strengths and not just kind of bend it to be an imitation of a more popular medium, you know? So that's I, I know Twitless has things he wants to say about that, but that's my most positive take on a very confusing scene.
I love that.
Mm.
At the end of the day, it was like, I know that Morrison is doing this because he wants to do his shaman thing, and that's what takes away a lot of the joy of me being in this story with him, because he's not just doing it for entertainment. He's doing it because he actually genuinely believes he has power to wield energy and forces, and he's like, comics are a way for him to approach sigil magic, and I'm just like,
Mm,
I am not on board with that. And
mhm.
as we dive into this, audience, where it gets even darker, and we're going to expose Grant Morrison a bit through this analysis. That's at least my mission uh, with this exploration. I will say one thing I wish that people would do when they want to break down reality in comics: why not change your art style, your rendering? If you want to
Mm,
like destabilize the narrative, why is it that you
yeah,
stick with the same art style? You just play with the panels, and it's like in an
funny.
artistic rendering, you could like change how tall you draw somebody. You could like you could remove shading, you could remove the inking, you could change the coloring drastically. You could do so many things that would really make you question the reality. And it seems like I feel like it's uh, too much in some ways, because this story does end up being very confusing, but also it's not enough. It's like comics, man. You already are a filtering reality
Yeah.
through the hand of the artist. You could have taken it way further to like really bend my mind over backwards. So
Do you think Chris Burnham is not picking up what Grant Morrison is putting down? Do you think he's I don't wanna say phoning it in, but do you think he's just in the same mode throughout this because he's not as willing to play as Grant is? Or I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, he's gotta produce, maybe he's just under a time, you know, he's like, I gotta color the guys the same way for every page or these things aren't getting turned to." 'Cause you're right, there is an opportunity here, and it doesn't I mean, the art's really nice, but it's the
yeah,
same
yeah,
mode for
yeah,
at least for these, 3 issues.
yeah.
So he's just kind of in the passenger seat, but he's not really actively engaging in it the way you'd like to see him do that. So
I think you could go further, definitely. I think
yeah,
in terms of being an Event Horizon story, I think this issue functions very much in that mode. And if you enjoy that, you're going to enjoy this ride. I think a lot of people who read this in issue form that's all they came for. It's all they got. It's like I said, the people who were fortunate or unfortunate enough to get the trade paperback to see, all of the notes of what Morrison's actually trying to attempt with this, where this thing starts to become much more of a sinister piece of work.
Mm.
well, I am looking forward to going down that rabbit hole of you calling out Grant Morrison, Footless, and
Yes, please.
I'm gonna question you along the way so that you have ample opportunity to really lay out your entire argument. There are curiosities there and things to be said about if the audience is a passive enjoyer of this medium right now, or is Morrison doing something surreptitious and trying to engage them in a way that they didn't sign up for? So, fascinating questions there.
Yeah, so let's do, final thoughts. Twitless, how do you wanna How do you want to land this particular plane for issue 3 of Nameless?
Issue 3 is fine. I think it for me, because this is my second read through of this issue. It's I think future issues where things really start to turn. I think the first few issues, it's just a roller coaster ride, and if you like mind bending roller coaster rides of like what's reality, what's not reality, but it's very dark and horror filled, and it's put to the comics very well put together for what it's trying to deliver on that sense. The only main criticism that I'll end on is that to be 3 issues in and to have very little to hold on to for the narrative, like,
Mm.
the story doesn't give you a whole you're just really just in you really are just on a roller coaster ride. You're just like, "Okay, what's next?" Because I don't even like, the character's name is Nameless. I don't even have a name for this guy, and I don't know what's real and what's not at this point. So you really have to be, from an issue to issue standpoint, you really have to be committed to, "I'm gonna see this through to the end." And I would imagine this would be a point where a lot of other people might have just jumped off and been like, "Dude, this is confusing as hell. I don't want this." So, you really have to be committed to the type of story that's being told here to continue on with it.
How about you, Well Read? What are your final thoughts?
I like this issue quite a bit. I thought it was very good at drawing you into the suspense. It's building it up very gradually. There's enough there, I think, where you're questioning reality, and things only really take a massive skew towards the end of the issue. I remember the entire first issue was just discombobulated, and I couldn't make heads or tails of anything happening there. At least this issue and the last one gave me some narrative to follow, some plot. But now that we're in this area, this realm of of confusion and disassociation, I don't know where things are going to go. So I genuinely hope there's a payoff at some point, outside of just having to name and shame all of the occultist efforts of Grant Morrison upon the audience. But narratively, I'm really curious to see where exactly he takes the story moving forward.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.